Our talk today is going to centre on resilience, and it's entitled Two Sides of the Same Coin. So my name is Andy Laidlaw. I'm a father, a granddad, a son, a brother. I like sailing, and I've spent time in prison. Gethin?
Yeah, my name is Gethin Jones. I'm also a father. I'm also a granddad. I'm also a son. I'm also a brother, and I like sailing. And I've also spent time in prison too. So Andy, just a quick question then, mate. What led you to prison then?
Well, I come from a pretty regular working class background. First contact with the justice system was actually when I was 12. It was one of those situations where you're maybe mixing with the wrong people, wrong place, wrong time. Found myself in what was then magistrate's court, charged with criminal damage. I didn't actually do it myself, but I was with the people who did. Thankfully, at the time, joint enterprise didn't exist, and the magistrates believed me. So after what was pretty traumatic experience for a 12-year-old, I never thought I'd be in court. I then went back to school, basically. My other early involvement with the justice system was basically being on the bus going past HMP Liverpool occasionally. That was my local prison. And I was fascinated by the fact that I couldn't see over the wall, even from the top deck of the bus. And that was about it for many years. Left school, finished sixth form, had a couple of jobs. I moved to London, had several more jobs. Two failed businesses, and I should have shown a bit more resilience, I think, because the Americans talk about you need to have two failed business before you succeed. And so I never actually went that extra mile and tried a third time. I basically came out of the world of self-employment and private enterprise and looked for something a bit more regular, if you like. So I was free of the justice system until a relative who worked in the prison service told me about the job and said that prisons in the south were crying out for staff. And I was living in London. I'd been for a while. I lived in Wimbledon at the time. So long story short, I was recruited as a prison officer at HMP Wandsworth, and that's where my career began. And I only joined the prison service to give it a try, if I'm honest. Fast forward 23 years, I am a prison governor. I have been for a number of years. I've worked at Wandsworth, Feltham, Liverpool, Risley, back to Liverpool for a second term. Headquarters for over a year with the probation reform people. And as of last week, I now work for the women's estate team with the 10 public sector women's prisons and the 2 contracted out prisons. So it's the longest job I've ever had, and I've had quite a few historically. It's also been the most rewarding, the most frustrating. It takes you on an emotional roller coaster most weeks, but the thing that's kept me interested and made me stay is the fact that you can make a difference to other people's lives, often without reward or thanks, but you can make a difference, and that's why I continue to do what I do. So, Gethin, what led you to spend time in prison?
Do you know what? It's quite funny actually, yeah, when you kind of tell that story, yeah. Because I was in court at 12 years old as well. My experience was a little bit different to yours though when I was in there at 12, and I had no fear of that environment. You know, I remember being in that juvenile court, and you couldn't sit in the dock in them days. You used to sat in the front. But I remember I went into that court specifically wanting to be put into children's homes. Yeah, I wanted a care order. I'd already been in court before that, and they gave me a conditional discharge, and I continued with my behaviour, wanting to go into care. But I suppose the first time I kind of really think about prison was I came out of foster care when I was around about 6 years of age. When I got home, my mum had a new partner. Yeah, he wasn't a nice man, but he was involved in the justice system in the wrong way. What I know today is he used to ring cars. Yeah, we always used to have loads of different cars back in the 70s and 80s, you know, Capris and Cortinas and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, and he wasn't, like you say, he wasn't a nice man. And unfortunately, you know, he went to prison for 3 years, which I was quite relieved about because it kind of got him out of the house. And I suppose that's the first time I really knew about prison. But then if I fast forward a bit, like when I did get into the children's homes and it wasn't the place of safety or the security or what it was that I kind of really wanted. And that was when I started to hear more about other prisons, because there was youngsters in there that had already been through detention centres and the old youth custody estates, which was like the old Borstals. I got my first custodial sentence when I was 14 years of age. Back in them days, you had to be 14 before you got locked up. So they kept adjourning it until 2 weeks after my 14th birthday, and they locked me up. And in total, I kind of spent 8 years of my life behind a prison wall. I was in 11 different prisons across the youth estate and also the adult estate. Yeah. The only time I ever saw a governor really was when I was down the block. Yeah. And you just come and either give me some more days in the block or for whatever it kind of was, you know. But yeah, and kind of fast forward it a little bit more as well. You know, I turned my life around about 16 years ago, and I had no intentions of going back into a prison, none at all. Yeah, I wasn't going back into a prison. Stop that, one for me. I didn't even want anything to do with the justice system, if I'm honest with you. And it was only about 6 years ago, you know, that I kind of started to do what it was that I was doing now. And then, you know, I was just approached to ask if I would do some stuff with some prison officers, you know, and I thought, yeah, go on then. And, you know, for the last 5 years, I think I've been in around 50 prisons across the UK now. You know, I've worked in headquarters at HMPPS alongside yourself, Andy. You know, I've worked in the youth estate, the male adult estate, the women's estate, you know, and I've got a real good understanding of it. And I suppose really that comes on to the next part of, you know, why I called it why we called it two sides of the same coin, you know, is because what I found throughout all of this process and this time is we're all just people. Yeah. You're just a human being. I'm just a human being, you know. And not only were two sides of the same coin, we was on two sides of the same door. Yeah, I was on the inside of the door, you was on the outside of the door. But you was also just a human being as well. And what I kind of find with people, yeah, is we're all the same. We all need the same things, yeah. We all want to feel like we belong, that we're cared for, that we can make a difference. You know, we just, you know, and, you know, that may be to our families, our children, whatever it is, you know. So, yeah, it's been an interesting journey. But I suppose really I need to ask you another question now then, Andy, because I don't want it all to be about me. I like listening to you. You're my brother from another mother. We look quite similar as well. Did you put that hoodie on purpose, did you?
Complete coincidence, mate.
I like the blue though, but you're an Everton fan. I'm a Pompey fan, so yeah, the blue's good. So really, then, yeah. So I'm just going to ask you this, yeah. So, so with staff in the prisons, yeah, I suppose resilience is a big thing. So how do prison officers and other people in the in HMPPS manage and maintain their resilience in a difficult job?
Well, prisons are all about people. And there are good people and not so good people in every large organisation. Takes all sorts of people to make an organisation like a prison work. And all staff should have a mind to support rehabilitation, but this can be difficult depending on who they're working with. There are some traditional views that still exist, so staff can suffer prejudice from those who don't believe in rehabilitation. You know, let's be honest, there are people who work in prisons who don't believe in rehabilitation. You can often tell which staff have had a relative or friend in prison because they have a better understanding of how easy it can be to end up in prison. They show a greater empathy and they're less judgmental of the prisoners that they're looking after. And they may have to put up with stereotypical criticism. Things like, you know, they're all the same, they're all wrong uns, you'll never change them, don't know what you're bothering to try for. You get the idea. They can be judged by their peers and sometimes ridiculed. They can be referred to as care bears, as if that's a bad thing. So you have to be pretty strong, resilient characters to put up with that kind of negativity. And it can be almost subconscious at all levels of the service. I've seen it at a number of levels. And it's just that kind of ignorance that led me to meet you, Gethin. If you bear in mind, it was possibly, it was a good few years ago now, but I'd been in a reductionary offending role that was trying to connect my prison to the community in a more meaningful way. trying to open it up, open the prison more and bring the outside in. It was all about community engagement at the time, and it was a relatively new thing. My then #1 governor said to me, we've had an invite to some round table event, whatever that is. It's about helping people leaving prison or maybe not come back, you know, that kind of thing. You do all that shit, don't you? And yeah, I confirmed to my boss that yes, I do indeed do all that shit. So I went to the round table event, and at that event there were people that some people on the meeting on the call today will know. Annie Fox was there, Michael Brown, who you might know as the Tartan Com from Twitter. The guys from Tempest Novo were there, and of course you, Gethin. And it was hugely affirming to me to realise that I wasn't a lone voice, I wasn't on my own, and there were lots of people of a like mind working towards the same goals, and that builds resilience. It gives you the boost you need when you have one of those frustrating days. And I think it also helps frontline staff maintain their resilience when they see a senior manager, a big bad prison governor, demonstrating that it's okay to show care and support and try and help someone live a better life on release. And I also, for what it's worth, think we've moved on hugely in the last decade or so. There are certainly a lot more governors who are focused on rehabilitation, and many more prison staff that understand that people don't need to keep coming back to prison if they've got the right support. Yeah, so thanks for that question, Gethin. That was a cracking question, but I'm going to bat that back to you now. How do people like you who've got lived experience and now work to support reform stay resilient? How do you maintain that resilience when the odds are against you quite often?
Yeah, I just kind of think back to that day when I met you, actually. Yeah. I don't know if people have watched Back to the Future, yeah, and that was my Back to the Future day. And if anyone has watched the film Back to the Future, it always go back to a certain day in 1985. It all kind of evolves around that day. And on that day, you know, I met some of the most important people that have been most influential in my journey to here, you know, and that's where a lot of my resilience comes from that kind of room. But if I talk about sort of like my own personal resilience, which may also be the same for other people with lived experience, you know, as a care leaver, you know, and Andy Breedy's on here as well. He's also another care leaver. I always say to care leavers, yeah, resilience for us is like a superpower. Yeah, it's like a superpower. Okay, you know, it's something that's just so strong in me, and it's kind of come from a lot of my experiences. But even though it's so strong, some days it can be weakened. Yeah, so there's some days where I can kind of take on anything. Yeah, there's nothing I cannot manage or deal with, and then there's other days where I just want to curl up into a ball and cry. Yeah, and I suppose really I have to kind of kick into stuff there as well, you know. And I suppose really, you know, that resilience first started for me. I had to like learn to sort of like how I could build that resilience was when I was kind of in prison, really. So a bit like what you were saying, you know. I remember when I was in prison, I was talking about changing. Yeah, my peers, yeah, they didn't believe that anyone could change. They didn't believe in rehabilitation. They didn't, you know, I don't like the word rehabilitation, so I'll say change. They didn't believe in that sort of stuff. And they believed no one was going to happen and there was going to be no future for us, you know. So a lot of my thoughts and feelings I had to keep to myself, you know, but I did find a certain couple of other people, yeah, that kind of thought in the same way. So we grouped together. Yeah, you know, I call it a power of five. There's a power of five, and we just grouped together and supported each other. And I suppose really that's exactly the same thing. And what I've brought out within the work that I do at the moment, you know, is because, you know, we're against a massive machine, yeah. And sometimes for me, it can feel like Goliath. Yeah, I've just got this huge monster in front of me and thinking, how is little old tiny Geth going to be able to do anything to make a difference in this massive organization? And the truth of the matter is on my own, probably not a lot. But when you kind of like got the Mary Claires and you got like the Annie Foxes and you've got sort of like the Natasha Porters and you've got all of these other people that are all working in lots and lots and lots of different ways, yeah, then actually there's an army of different people, yeah, all chipping away at different kind of areas. And then also as well, you know, you've got Jason Morris on there at the moment, you've got yourself, Andy, there's Piers Sinha, there's lots of other people as well within the system that are doing it from the inside as well, you know, and everyone's just kind of chipping away. And I suppose really that's where my resilience comes from. My resilience comes from the power of knowing I'm not alone. Yeah, I'm not alone in this. Yeah, there's other people, and we're all trying to do the same kind of things, you know. And yeah, and I suppose really as well, and this kind of comes back to a business thing. Yeah, so in a business thing, yeah, they always say, yeah, we overestimate what we can do in a year, but we underestimate what we can do in 10. Yeah, and that's the reality of the job that we've got in hand. Yeah, you know, we overestimate what we can do in the next 12 months. Yeah, but we underestimate of the power that we can all do within the next 10. And that feeds my resilience. That feeds my strength, my courage, and my ability to get up every day and try and make a difference. So that was a great question. Actually, I asked the question, didn't I? So
yeah, you did.
Thanks, guys.
we just got a top tip.
Go on.
Andy, can you just give some top tips on about how to do resilience? Any top tips for the guys that are watching?
Yeah, I can talk about, well, top tips, maybe challenges, maybe just thought-provoking stuff. But I believe there's a number of people on the call who, like me, are from the system. Lots of people who, by virtue of their roles, are in a position of power. So if that's you, I want to challenge you to say yes more. Don't use data protection as an excuse. Don't use security as an excuse. Don't be risk averse as a default setting. Yeah. Do take calculated risks, explore possibilities. Let your colleagues see you being open-minded and encourage them to do the same. Give them permission effectively. And for a lived experience colleagues on the call, I just say you need to stick at it, because we need your input. We need your help to improve what we do. There are people in the system, more than you'd think, who want to support you to help others, and that advice applies to the voluntary sector, charities, faith-based groups, CICs, anyone trying to make a difference. So try and remain positive. And if you think someone is avoiding you, keep trying, be tenacious. There could be many reasons why they don't return your calls or respond to your emails. In the prison environment particularly, they may actually be spending a lot of time in the prison. Some of the best reform allies do. They're not sat at a desk waiting for the phone to ring. They're out doing. So don't take it personally. It's just the system. Keep plugging away. And I appreciate that that's easy for me to say. So what I want to do is just give a bit of commitment to everyone who's here today before we all leave. If you're trying to work with prisons or probation and you're struggling with blockages or log jams or just radio silence, get in touch with me direct and I will try and help you connect with the right person. I'm the only Andy Laidlaw in the MOJ. I'm very contactable outside of that world. I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter, you name it. Tell me who you are, give me an idea of the problem you're having, keep it brief, and don't expect me to get back to you quickly, but I will get back to you. It may take a week or so, because I do have some time off work sometimes. And if I don't get back to you, contact me again. Be tenacious, be resilient. I give you permission to harass me. So for what it's worth, they'd be my tips. And Gethin, if you could give us a couple of tips.
Yeah, my top tips are quite simple, really. Yeah, and I'm going to do the top tips from in relation to the work that I used to do. So when I worked within the public sector, I made a decision that I wasn't going to share my past with my team, and I used to manage staff teams of 40. And what it was when I used to hear the professionals speak, yeah, sometimes they'd be moaning about the service user, and when I used to listen to them, I used to think, do you know what, you're not right, but you're also not wrong. The answer's somewhere in the middle. And then sometimes I'd have the client, the service user, who'd want to make a complaint against their staff member. And when I'd listen to them, I'd like think, do you know what? You're not right, but you're not wrong. The answer sits somewhere in the middle. And what I kind of see a lot sometimes is there's a lot of sides where people think, because I've got a lived experience, I know best. Because I work within the system, I know best. The truth of the matter is neither of us know best. Yeah, the best comes from us working together. Yeah, and we do that by coming in with an open mind, a bit of humility. Yeah, and then digging into our resilience, strength and courage so that together we can work out and create a solution that works for all. So that'd be my top tips. But it's been a pleasure chatting with you this afternoon, Andy. And I'd just like to say, it's not only me and Andy, the two sides of one coin. And not only are me and Andy stood on opposite sides of the door, we're also sometimes just two blokes in a pub having a pint. Cheers, mate.
Oh, what an ending. Thank you both so much. That was a really powerful